We do have top executives who gathered yesterday at the CNBC Leadership Exchange. Here's a little bit of what they had to say about the top issues facing CEOs as we head into 2022.
The pandemic is far from over, and Omicron is, I believe, a real threat. We've got 30 mutations on the spike protein, and that may make this variant more transmissible and resistant to vaccines and treatments.
Cities are back globally. And the challenge that comes with that is similar to some of our other CEOs is the availability of labor.
It's not one particular type of volatility. It's enormous volatility in our supply chain. It's from everything from input availability, capacity, transportation, labor. It's COVID adaptations, ways of working adaptation. It's this accordion economy of sort of stop, go, and the adaptations required. But beyond that, it's the demands that it's placed on our people, which is sort of the grit and determination and the agility to sort of cope with that volatility on a daily basis.
Joining us now to talk about these corporate issues is management expert and CNBC special correspondent Suzy Welch, who moderated yesterday's discussion. And Suzy, it's so great to see you right now. I was thinking it's only been a week since we were thinking, wow, we are getting to the end or to better times when it comes to both COVID and the supply chain. And boy, what a difference a week makes. What are the key thoughts coming from all of these people about how we get through the rest of this?
There were two. Hello, Becky. There were two strong themes among these CEOs. There were 10 of them in the conversation, which was wide-ranging. And the main theme that came out was that there's no going back to any kind of old normal. The new normal is persistent and is volatility. That there's not ever going to be a time that we used to know where you had some visibility and you could plan a few quarters in advance, and there was not any kind of, there was no sort of rest periods. There's a sort of a wistfulness for the old days, but it also a really strong sense that it's over, that now the reality that all executives and all leaders are dealing with is just nonstop, persistent volatility. Mm-hmm. But interestingly, and I think nobody was kind of shocked about Omicron, sort of there being another wave of COVID. There was sort of this resignation to the fact that it might never go away, that there was never going to be this old sense where we were doing things the way we did, and COVID was a memory, a very bad memory. Remember that terrible time. That there's now this new sense of it's just a bumpy ride. There's all sorts of shortages, the supply chain. There's the fatigue of people who work for you around doing everything in a new way. But interestingly, somewhere halfway through the conversation, we started talking about ways companies have adapted to nonstop volatility. And there was this weird kind of excitement and almost kind of euphoria among the group where they started talking about innovative ways they've adapted to this new volatility and actually learned how to manage people and processes better. And that they never want to go back to certain things because COVID forced them to manage their people in a way that gave their work more meaning and more purpose, and that they found incredibly efficient ways to do new processes. One of the executives was saying we've reduced our travel and entertainment budget by 75%, and we'll never go back again. We don't need to because we can do wine tastings on Zoom with our clients. So two sides.
Okay, so that there's a lot of things that come out of that, but just the reducing travel and entertainment by 75%. I mean, I feel like we kind of ran through this before. After 9/11, nobody wanted to travel. It was the same sort of deal, and we thought that we were not going to do that again. Do you think that's really the case? Because that's really bad news for airlines that rely so much on business travelers, other industries too, like hotels. Do you think that's really the case, or do you think people kind of miss being in person with people? Maybe they just do it more selectively in the future?
I think it's generational. I mean, I think that, people of my vintage sort of miss some of the things that used to be because we were doing them for decades. But I work in a company where the oldest employee is 31 years old. besides me. And they don't have any desire to go back in the office or do a lot of the things that we used to do. They weren't enculturated to it. So I do think there's a generational divide. Mm-hmm. And given the labor shortages, it's not like you can say there's no decrees. We're going back to the old ways. There were really big upsides to it. You're going to have to adjust. And there may be different ways you manage different cohorts of workers. But I do think there is this analog to 9/11 where we thought, irony was dead and all sorts of things were never going to come back. And they certainly did. And so maybe time will tell. But with Omicron coming in, there was just a firm sense that 2022 was not going to be a return to anything that was familiar to us.